ideyalar hem proyektler daha iyi. Onlar lazım ayırsın agresif dezenformasyaları. Angılarını politikler birbirine atır. Sıkça insanlar lazım ayırsın daha küçük fenalı ya da seslerini versin bir kandidat için çünkü geçmesin öbürü. Böyle insanlar karşı seslerini verir. Politikacıların yönelimli instrumentleri o dezenformasya hem dil kayıt cevaplı medya sızıntıları. Bu cinklerin efektleri gitgide daha derin. Politika polarizasyası insan arasında pek yüksek. Cümle pay edildi grupalara. Angıları birbirini düşman sayır. Azarlamak hem yufka dili sıradan bir iş gibi oldu. Bizim cümle yazır, yaşar atmosferada angısı bozuk anlamamakla hem pesimizmle. İnsanların inanması partiyalara hem yöndericilere bulunur minimumda. Yen işak uğurda, yen aşakı uğurda. Pek aşağıda kuvvet enstitülerine inanmak. Her yıl Moldova'nın gider 40-50 bin insan. O insanlar angıları ister hem var nasıl çalışsın. Ama bütün Moldovan halkın sayısı 2 milyon. Biz kaybederiz enerjiyi, angısı lazım geliştirsin hem enitlesin bizim devleti. Devletin halkı ihtiyarlar. Uşakların sayısı azalır. Bu bir örnek ne türlü sonuçlar getirir dezenformasya. İkinci historia. Bugünler bütün dünya seyreder Ukrayna'da geçen oluşları. Belli ani dünya paylaştı iki tarafa. Angıların arasında birbirine doğru agresiya hem azetmemek büyür. İnsanların bakışlarını kaplama deni çalışır bir sıra medya kurumları. Çizdiririm. Kaplama insanların bakışlarını ama dil haberleme cümleyi. Ama Ukrayna'da oluşlar o insanların 30 yılın içinde davranışının çıkışları. Bu taraftan bitki 30 yıl görünmez bilim hem teknoloji progresi ileriydi, angıladı dünyanın zedisi regionlarında yaşamak uğrunu kaldırdı hem insanların kulaklarını daha geniş yaptı. Globalizasya açtı yeni kolaylıkları devletler arasında kooperasya için da hepsi devletlere geliştirmeyecek kataloglu oldu. Hep o kadar bu yıllarda dünyanın devletleri harcadı onlarla trilyon silah hem silahlanmak için. Ta keskin hem ta büyük zarar yapan silah için. Bu yatırımlar gösterir ne kadar devletler arasında inancılık yok. Silah yarışması ayın açık gösterir hani biz inanırız. Ateşin kuvvetine daha çok ne kadar diyalog hem saygılı kompromisin kuvvetine. Bugün açan Ukrayna'da konflikt derinir, insanlar bütün dünyada ayrıtıla paylara, angıları dayaklar bu ya da öbür tarafı. Dayaklar bir insanları karşı öbürlerine. Bu bir örnek nice insanlara informasya verilir. Biz olduk davacı birbirimize. Da hani yardım edelim çözme problemi. Biz onu zorladırız hem derini deriz. Bütün insanlık o bir ekip. Biz hep o kadar lazım yaşayalım beraber bu planetada. Bize gelecek sıra kurtulma o kavgalardan angılarını şimdi yaradır büyük informasya akıntıları doğruluğun sadece bir payını açıklayın. İnformasyanın yarısı var, dezenformasyanın bir parçası. Medya instrumentleri yönünde büyündürer büyük görev. İnformasyayı o türlü yayınlama, ani insanlar daha iyi not alasın. Kuvvetlerin, kararların doğruluğunu hem kalitesini. Kuvvetlerin sağ yönünde durar görev yok etme dezenformasyayı hem manipülasyayı. Köstek koymadan presaya yapma kendi misyasını, cümleyi haberleme. Ben neredeyse okudum. Hani bir deniz altında kayakta ta kötü kuvvet var. Ne kadar bütün 2. Dünya Cengi'nde patlatılmış silahlarda. Bunları fikre alacak peydalanır soruş. Ne kadar lazımlı şimdi yatırım yapma silah hem silahlanmak için. Silahlanmak yarışması bitirine insanlık kayıp olacak. Biz her kere söyleriz. Hani hepsini yaparız uşaklarımıza hem onukolarımıza. Hadi soralım kendimize. Niye biz halizden bırakacağız bizim uşaklarımıza? Bizim mirasımız 2 paydan olacak. Bizim uşaklar kabul edecek bizden dünyayı ekolojiya soruşlarından. Hep o kadar onlar kabul edecek cümleyi iyi hem kötü taraflarından. Planetanın durumu kötü. Uşaklar kabul edecek bizden global ısınmasını daha kötü. Kurakları hem büyük selleri. Ormanlarda yangınları, milyarlarla ton gübürleri, kabul edecekler kirli solu toprağı hem suyu. Bu problemler yapılı bizim evladımızla da biz savaşmadık onları çözme. Ekolojiya projelerini insanlık harcar 1%'dan az ondan ne kadar harcar silahlanmak için. İnsanlık toplumun durumu sevindirmiyor. Biz ayrık. Biz öğrenmedik sayma birbirini. Biz pek sık düşünürüz o için ne biz ayrıdır. Biz saymıyoruz birbirimizi bir türlü. Biz pek büyük egoist. Çok vakit kaybederiz kavgalaşmak için. Pek az vakit hem resurs buluruz halizden lazımlı problemalara angalarını bağlı insanların gelecek zamanı.
Irina.
Ben inanırım. Ani demokratiya bugün cümleden için en yakılı sosyal modeli. Ama biz isterse kurma halizden çetin demokratiyayı lazım tutalım akılımızda. Ani dezenformasya, demokratiya dini, yülümlük ilacı. Dezenformasya insanların arasında anlaşmaya yok eder. Ama anlaşmaksız insanlar her zaman olacak yufka. Sonunda isterim tekrarlarma Amerika Prezidenti Barack Obama'nın laflarını. Demokratiyada var kompromis, o zaman da açan sen %100 doğrusun. Bugün daha çok ne kadar başka zamanlar insanlar dünyada lazım bulsunlar kompromis.
Thank you very much. I can say that I understood 95% of that. Thank you. Okay, clearly, even with a small country like Moldova, you can see the divisive power of the spread of disinformation, and thank you for those anecdotes. Gökhan, I want to turn back to you. Hikmet Hacı'ya was talking about sort of using truth as an instrument to combat disinformation. When you're building sort of a strategic approach to combating disinformation at the highest levels, a country of 80 plus million, 2 million in Moldova, 80 plus million. Talk to us about some of the other tools that you use.
Well, the word strategic is key here, I think, because if we essentialize disinformation, that could mislead us. We don't essentialize disinformation, but we see it as an essential part of our larger strategic communication model. Since 2018, the Directorate of Communication, and that's the date when it was founded under the new presidential system, we have been trying to build a model which is called the Turkey communications model. Combating disinformation is only one part of it, okay? And why is important, why is mentioning that combating disinformation is only one part of it? Because there are other segments of this model, like public diplomacy, okay, like strategic communications, like national security communications, like crisis communications. So if we don't do our work with all these other segments of our Turkey communications model, whatever we do in the disinformation bit will fail. So if we don't define, if we don't lay out our narratives, some other people, some other groups, the enemies, will come into play and start filling this void, and which will in turn create a national security problem or an international security problem or a regional security problem, right? So that's one thing. And I'd like to also mention one important point that you pointed out at the very beginning, which is about this technology paradox, right? So technology gives us this great opportunity to build a huge capacity for communications. Social platforms, I and Matthias have known each other for the past 15 years. We started as advocates of the term digital diplomacy globally, okay? So that's what technology works for, conducting digital diplomacy. But now it's weaponized. So I think combating disinformation also requires to manage this paradox as well. I'll give you one example. There's a software called, an AI-driven software called GPT-3. I don't know if any of the audience...
What's it called?
GPT-3. It's an AI-driven software created by OpenAI, right? There are many YouTube videos, and I also saw many of them. If you go to the system, it's a text completion system. Text completion systems will be the future of journalism. And Guardian and New York Times created...
So it means I'm going to be out of a job.
Not anytime soon. So they created articles and news with it over the past 6 months. Go and try to work with the system. Go and type Muslim, and leave it like that. And see how it completes the rest of the text. Muslim, that's I. Gökhan writes, comma. And now GPT-3 comes into play. It says, 3 Muslims went into a church, that's the AI, killed 70 people, and then came out to church and started shooting at the people on the street. So this does not make us our lives any easy either. I mean, this is also, we should bear in mind all these possibilities and all these scenarios, not a very futuristic way of thinking, but also in an analytical way of thinking, and start thinking, seriously thinking about how to combat or how to build up a new capacity. And I believe, maybe I should stop here after making this sentence. I have been, before my current job as well, I've been a techno-optimist for many years. And I've been advocating the true use of technology in many areas. In my previous job in education, Ministry of Education, in diplomacy, in advertising, okay? But if we don't become aware of the fact that the former paradigm, which tells us, okay, digital literacy will help us combat disinformation. No, it does not. It accelerates disinformation. We have to build a new way of literacy, which is disinformation literacy. We have to create new categories and make them.
I would say, we really have to use digital literacy. Digital tools have to be taught in schools, and not only the dangers of the internet, but I want in the curricula in all schools, once the children are 13, I want them to learn how to build a Facebook page, how to use Instagram responsibly. Why don't they have, making the school newspaper on Facebook? Then they will learn which picture they can post. They have to ask their friends if they can, they're identifiable in posts. I think, we really have to teach digital literacy.
We have to make a distinction between the two users.
But last point.
Actually, I want to ask our audience members who thinks that actually we need digital literacy to combat disinformation. We need it. And we need a new approach. And the other side? Okay, so it's actually pretty evenly split.
The bottom line is our children, we are not teaching them how to use social media. It's the children who are teaching us. We are, at least in our generation, our children show us, look what we can do on TikTok. And they can do better edits than I did when I was a journalist at Euronews.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Unfortunately,
digital literacy and social media literacy. Well, it's an important topic that our colleagues mentioned. From Azerbaijan perspective, before coming here, we had a national cabinet level coordination meeting with the Minister of Education and Minister of Communication and developing national-wide curriculum for social media literacy. Really, children at school should know what's in social media, and in the meantime, they should also use in a positive way social media and should also be aware about the negative tendencies, how they can be manipulated, including the child pornography and different negative tendencies that we can see here. Along with the digital literacy, we should also highlight here media literacy as well. Media literacy in a sense of fighting against the disinformation, because journalists here and professional media, from one side is a producer, from another side is a consumer of information. If you put in a competition social media tendencies and professional media, and journalism is also somehow cannot compete in this process. It's an economic aspect, advertisement market, and that causes a social media giants. Yet another aspect that also causes declining role of the media is yet another bigger discussion we can come here. And along with the national efforts that we are doing as a government level, as I already mentioned, and here situational awareness is also key and strategically important. Situational awareness in a sense that having a full monitoring and having a prevention strategy. Disinformation is a thing that once it's in a spread, it's really very difficult to fight against that. Because even you are trying to truth, there are, at least you will find some persons and some individuals that they will believe towards disinformation. But prevention or prophylactic work is always better, but it's not always successful. At least you know from where you can expect. And here, disinformation, we should also have a definition about the forms of disinformation and also methodologies of disinformation. What kind of forms of disinformation we're facing? First, political, social, economic, and you can name it. We can have the different sorts of that. And during the pandemic, we can even call it medical sort of disinformation that we can see. And also, who is spreading disinformation? Who's the invisible hand around the world?
I'm going to get to that, but
yeah, okay.
let me ask you. I mean, okay, so we as journalists, we value correct information. Academics, they value correct information. Governments, they value correct information. But you're all looking at this from at 30,000 feet. Let me ask you, do you think the average citizen out there, I'm not saying our audience, but the average citizen out there, do you think they value this as much as we do or you do?
They do, they must, they should. That's,
But not always.
Not always. I am defending an ideal position in order to make my life easier. But I think, look, disinformation is an issue of human dignity as much as it's an issue of national security and international security. Okay? So that's the main line that our president made in his talk yesterday. We prioritize a human-centric approach. Okay, we have to defend human dignity as much as we defend international security and the national security of our country. Because we now see social platforms and global tech giants who act as quasi-states. They have users and they tell us that they are a big state of having this population of 3 billion users, but not citizens, okay? But when these users have great and grave problems in these social media platforms like Meta, like Facebook, like Instagram, like TikTok, do they get the response that they need or the help? I think we are there. We are there to help our citizens as well to keep their dignity and privacy and their data privacy to begin with, to combat disinformation as well. And that's why we built a center for combating disinformation in our directorate. And that's why we are building probably the first of its kind in the world, a social app as well as a web platform called Doğru to combat disinformation. And that's why, thirdly, we built a new database of all the disinformation activities directed towards Turkey, okay, over the past 2 years. We know who attacked us and why. And that's a good that gives us the opportunity to see where we should work harder. As I mentioned at the beginning, we also have to do nation branding. We also have to do public diplomacy. We also have to do strategic communication to decrease the burden on our shoulders and not making life easier for those or perpetrators of disinformation who are always ready and who never sleep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I actually want to bring your attention to one of the important forums that was organized by the Director of Communications for the Presidency of the Republic of Turkey, Stratcom, which was held a couple of months ago. There you actually gave specific examples of the cyber attacks or the disinformation that was coming towards Turkey and how the specific department was actually combating this, whether it's the forest fires that we saw, a negative saying about Turkey, extremely important when it comes to a response at a national level then.
Exactly. And that's not only one department, all the departments in our directorate. My department, Department of Strategic Communication and Crisis Management, Public Diplomacy Department, Public Relations Department, Department of Press and Media Relations and Affairs. We all combat disinformation 7/24, 365 days a year. We never stop because disinformation never sleeps.
But here, as a follow-up to my Turkish colleague Gökhan's comments, really, at a national level, all efforts fine. Even at a national level, Turkey and Azerbaijan, we are coordinating some of our activities against disinformation. But when it comes to the practical, when issue comes to strategic level, sometimes our resources are not enough. Because we are talking about a digital anarchy. Digital anarchy in a sense when giant tech companies, they're providing their platforms for using this disinformation, and they know that there is an element of disinformation. But at some point, they're doing something against these elements of disinformation, but it's not enough. We're also talking elements of the artificial intelligence, that human brain fights against an artificial intelligence. In this fight, we cannot be effective. Then we are coming global regulation and global oversight. Simply, there is not such a mechanism. With tech companies are abided by the national laws of one particular country, but they're operating globally, and there is no global universal frameworks how we can oversight of these activities. And they can do it. And they have a responsibility to do it, and there's a bare responsibility for such a global digital anarchy. Without that, all our national efforts will not be enough for fighting against disinformation.
Okay, so you talk about digital anarchy. I want to ask you, I mean, you were asking this question, who's behind this? I mean, is it, Gökhan, you mentioned GPT-3, I don't know if that's the correct...
Well, that's only one example.
First start with the giant tech companies. It's very simple, Facebook, Google, and some others. Let's start with that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with them.
But is
I mean, they have a
is this a
responsibility.
technology problem or is this a human problem?
Basically, they have these companies, obviously, the platforms have a responsibility to clean up, as you call it, the digital anarchy, and they have done it. You look on Instagram, whenever you want to post a picture with a woman and bare breasts, it won't even upload. They can't do that. So they should maybe do the same with pictures from wars, from, whatever, until they have been independently verified. They could actually do this. And so I think that is one way to fight against disinformation.
What's the incentive, though? What's the incentive for them?
Well, the incentive...
Making more money.
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
they're going to make more money just
they
by...
make more money, exactly.
Yeah, they're going to make money by censoring this?
We know how they work, right?
I know how one of the recent
work.
research of the Facebook, and they made a research, and they found that if they're fighting against the disinformation, it means that less people are coming to the Facebook. From another side, it's a loss in revenues.
I still think, I'm in big favor of, not censoring, but at least, some talk is not allowed on social media platforms. The German government has done very effectively and imposed it on Facebook and Twitter, and they have to take down content really, really within hours. So, in Germany, the big platforms are functioning according to German laws. But I would even go a step further. We see, kind of on Twitter, I would love to have a foul language Twitter. If you use a swear word, well, that tweet, you can send it, but it won't really kind of travel. It won't be, promoted, you can't retweet. I'd love that, just to clean up.
Alijan, let me give you one example.
Okay.
Twitter banned more than 7,000 accounts a year ago. You know why the reason was? Why they did it?
Why?
Because they supported President Erdogan with a couple of sentences. That was the only reason. They were banned.
Okay, let me ask you this. Out of those 7,000 accounts, the biggest example whose Twitter account was actually banned was probably former President Donald Trump. It's very, I mean, can we see examples of that from countries like Azerbaijan or Turkey or Moldova?
There are many examples.
So Donald Trump has contravened against the terms and conditions of Twitter. Okay, there was a reason, and he did it several times. So at one point, Twitter says, "Sorry, this has to stop."
Yeah.
I believe the presidents, the governments of Azerbaijan, Turkey, or Moldova haven't done that. So but I would think Twitter will absolutely do the same for any other world leader.
Do you think there's going to be an even playing field?
I hope so.
But the problem is that
you know where there is no even playing field is, and these platforms have a responsibility to do that. The famous blue verification mark. Everybody wants to have it. Who gets it? Guess what? The Bulgarian Prime Minister, he was here this morning, Kirill Petkov, is not verified on Twitter. The Foreign Minister of Estonia, the Foreign Minister of Bulgaria, the Foreign Minister of Andorra, the Foreign Minister of Liechtenstein, they're all not verified. This is not a level playing field. And more 5,000 embassies have a presence on Twitter. Half of them are not verified. Well, when you're Russia, China, the US, the UK, France, you're immediately verified, after having sent your first tweet. So for the moment, it's not a level playing field.
Well, not only is it not a level playing field, but there's double standards here.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
Certainly. During the war, 44 days later, one day my Twitter account was also banned and was closed because of the complaints from the Armenian side. It was also part of disinformation, but then I proved that I'm innocent and they opened it. But here, tech companies, also one part of the problem, Matthias, when I'm talking about an oversight, it's not about the censorship. At least there should be regulation or global convention at a UN level, at a global level. We should know what we are dealing for, otherwise this digital anarchy will continue and is beyond capacities of the individual countries. And then my question is also, who is conducting with the disinformation? Who is behind that? Who is in the invisible hand? There are individuals engaged in that, non-state actors, but most dangerously, state-sponsored disinformation campaign. That's the most dangerous part. It's an industrial level of operation, but you can call it information warfare, you can call it hybrid warfare, and so on, as a more dangerous part of that. Of course, you are right that disinformation was always a case in the history of the humankind. But now, with the elements of the new technology and social media, it becomes widespread. Therefore, as a societies, as a countries, and also global international community, we should come to this conclusion that disinformation and all side effects are real threats to our societies. And as a result of this disinformation, some people who are behind that trying to find the cracks in our society and manipulate in a wrong direction, and also in a purposeful way undermine confidence to our governments, and also create that's called murky water in our societies. And in a murky water, fishing sometimes is much easier. That is a purpose.
Gökhan, Matthias was saying that not all embassies on Twitter are equal. Hikmet, you're saying that not all spreaders of disinformation is equal. Let me ask you, talk to me about the difference between disinformation spread by a state actor and a non-state actor and its ramifications.
Well, whether it's a state actor or a non-state actor, the non-state actors also live in certain states as well. And that's one of the main problems that Turkey faces. Turkey has been facing for the past 2 years. Let me tell you why. Reuters Institute of Journalism created a report a couple of years ago stating that Turkey is exposed to disinformation more than any other country in the world. Okay, in their scale, we are 47%, whereas Germany and US and UK are all 12 and 11. So that's, we've been inquiring about why. And then we started finding out that, of course, we know who, as I said, we have this this database of this information for the past 2 to 3 years. And we know what FETÖ does and says, and how they create fake news and manipulations in the internet. Okay? And we know how PKK and other its derivatives, marginal groups, create disinformation or fake news to attack the interests of the Republic of Turkey on the internet. So, and where are they? Where are these account holders? These account holders live in some other states. Okay? So I'm trying to underline the complexity and integrity of state and non-state actors and how they can interact, knowingly or unknowingly. But I think that's a key point to underline. Okay? We've been talking to our counterparts in other countries and telling them these groups, these people, these accounts are constantly attacking the Republic of Turkey and its interests. As I said, whether they attack our SİHAs and İHAs like drones, or our technology companies, or the Wasin, the Turkovac, but these people and these accounts and these groups are based in some countries. So the difference between, or the distinction between state and non-state actors begin to blur when we talk about disinformation.
I think you're a bit too reactive, you know, because
That's my job.
I totally understand, you know, there is
Personally
problems,
or
no, just there are problems with disinformation, you know. Do you have to react to every one of them?
But do you want to come and work in my office for a day and then start realizing that that we really have to work hard to combat disinformation, because I'm not working in a private sector company. I'm working for the Republic of Turkey, and I'm responsible for 77 million people and their security and their privacy and their welfare and their prosperity. So I have to keep this up. And this is constantly under attack.
But
that's
isn't there a way,
isn't there, how many countries actually deal with a threat like the Fethullah Gülen terrorist organization or the PKK? I mean, it's not very many countries actually have this rich of a pocket of spreaders of disinformation, as Gökhan is saying.
Maybe, it's hard to say, but
you said in Germany you adopted law fighting against the social media elements, for example.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a law. But here we're coming another dilemma, another paradox.
Regulation.
If such a law regulation adopted in Azerbaijan or in Turkey, there will be harsh criticism that Azerbaijan is somehow blocking the media and social media.
Yeah.
When it's adopted over there, that's fine. When it comes to Azerbaijani case, that's something different. There is some kind of double standards because we don't have any universal regulations how to deal with that.
Irina, let me ask you. I mean, we're all saying there's a need for a global approach, but if one country comes up with a suggestion, it can be misinterpreted in another. What are some of the things that you'd like to see in your country in terms of combating the spread of disinformation?
Bu temani siz kaldırdınız bugün. Bu platformada o çok yönümlü, onu lazım konuşma, onu lazım her zaman tutmak onda. Biz görüyoruz hani vakit çok hızlı değişiyor, çok yeni işler oluyor da bize, hükümetlere, insanlara lazım uçku olma, hani bizim insan dünyada uslulukta yaşasın, umutlasın, hani hepsi zaman vakitte da iyi olacak. O için açın biz deriz dezinformasya, konuşuruz dezinformasyasın lazım unutmama, hani diyalog, anlaşmak, kompromis o lafla, hani her zaman lazım tutma aklında da ileri alma onları da çalışma beraber her bir devletle lazım bulsuna kompromis. Şimdi olur Ukrayna'da biz anlarız, hani sayın kompromis, sayın diyalog varınca bu dünyada arasın usluyu.
Teşekkür ederim. Thank you. Dialogue and compromise. Gökhan, let me ask you, I mean, do you feel that there is sort of a grading system when it comes to disinformation? You talked about the PKK, you talked about FETÖ, but talk to me about xenophobia, which is clearly a big problem on social media, Islamophobia. does it have different effects, and do you deal with it in different ways?
We do, but let me again give another example in parallel to what President Erdogan said yesterday about his orchestra chief, the conductor, who was fired from a Western band, remember? Okay? So along similar lines, we shouldn't demonize people, that's what I'm trying to say. Along similar lines, I can give you an example about creating polarization and filter bubbles and echo chambers amongst societies and nations. The meta ecosystem, Facebook and Instagram, made it possible, and in their regulations, according to their regulations, lawful to insult Russian people. I don't know if anyone read the news here. Okay, so the countries are fighting, and you know this is fair enough. They do their own fight in the battlefield. We closely monitor it. We have our position towards it, all set. But when it comes to encouraging people, because they lift all the hate speech regulations on users who want to insult Russians online, on Facebook and Instagram. That stirs, of course, xenophobia. And that also supports all these crazy people on the streets who want to use the internet and integrate with their own real life and go and find people and punish. That's not what we want to do, okay? And in Turkey as well. I'll give you another example as well. I have many examples from, as I said, from our database, but one good example would be a British newspaper created a story probably 6 months ago about claiming that a refugee center would be established in eastern borders of Turkey by or supported by the British state. I think it was the Independent. And this word started to spread in Turkey, even amongst political leaders and, you know, activists or journalists. But that was fabricated news, and it was by no means the truth. So again, let's not forget, I think we never mentioned it aptly, the phrase post-truth age. That's where we should really start becoming careful. The post-truth age and its perpetrators and perpetrators of disinformation want to replace truth with facts and fake. Okay, so we have to be careful about not letting that happen now and in the future.
I'm wondering from a technology, Matthias, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, the only way to fight it, and you pointed that out, is speed and accuracy. You know, basically counter the disinformation.
But what actually determines the spread of it? I mean, is it all right, so we have a fabricated news story. What determines the rate that it actually spreads? Because I can come across a story, it may not fit to my particular approach to news. It may be framed in a way that I may not like it. Does that spread quicker than others? I mean, what determines, I think that's also an important driving factor in all this too.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, it's the algorithm of the platforms, obviously, you know, which helps spread fake news and false information. You know, if it fits in our, you know, world picture, you know, that spreads like wildfire. But what I think is really important, and you know, there's two great examples here sitting. It's the preparation. You know, governments have to prepare for these info wars. And how do you prepare? I'll give you one example. Is in Belgium in 2013 or 2011, they set up the Crisis Center B. It's a Twitter account, you know, to inform the population of natural disasters and so on. That account really came to the fore in 2016 during the bomb attack in Brussels and became the official kind of government news account. Look at Ukraine for the past 2 weeks. You know, who is that crisis account that I should follow, that we should follow. Obviously, we're following President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has become a social media star. But which other leader is there? Is there Dmytro Kuleba? Should I follow the defense ministry or the foreign ministry? It's not really clear, or it takes some time. Or should I go on to Telegram, where you get updates from the Ministry of Interior? So I think this is really important to have one crisis account set up so people know where to turn to. In Azerbaijan, you have the @Azerbaijan Twitter account, kind of the official account of the country. But still, I want to have that one source, where it's all centralized. And you were speaking about centralization. And in Turkey, kudos to not Turkey, but you have iletişim, communications in Turkish, in English, and in Russian. So I think that those are accounts which are really important to give the official information. Is that always truthful? I doubt it. But at least, it's the official information from the government.
I want to give you the last word before I sort of open up the floor for some questions.
As colleagues mentioned, authoritative information from the government institutions in a speedy manner is crucially important. And again, I would like to reiterate that investigation coordination is a key, and also having your own algorithm in crisis communication, in such case, how you can operate. And also, we talked about social media-based disinformation, but media-based disinformation should also be taken into account. With all due respect to the professional journalism, unfortunately, in the professional media space, we can see elements of the disinformation. And also, we should be very clear here, there are no angels in the disinformation field. Unfortunately, when we are talking about the disinformation, everyone has such an impression that only it comes from the East. I don't want to name any particular country, but it comes from the West as well. I can give you an example, one disinformation campaign against my country. For example, Le Figaro. Le Figaro writes about a croissant, nice French ladies, and Azerbaijan. And when we are providing our response, it's never published. And the editor-in-chief and deputy editor-in-chief of this newspaper actively, personally, is engaged against disinformation against my country.
There are so many examples.
So many examples. I can provide it.
And it's not just at state level, it's celebrities online, it's everywhere.
Exactly. Therefore, we are fighting against them, and our reliance and our confidence that we rendered was always in a professional journalism, that professional journalism can provide a role of somehow firework against an elements of the irresponsible disinformation, but professional media, if engaged in that process, it's yet another challenge. And globally speaking, journalism and professional media is also under the challenge, as we talked already about. We shouldn't deny the fact about the economic aspect of the professional journalism and media, because all of this advertisement revenues are mostly going to tech giants, and professional media losing a lot. And also credibility and professionality of the media is also going down. That's it, another specific topic. Because in fight against disinformation, one of the most important instruments, along with the social media platforms, is also traditional media. TV, radio, online media, and print media, we as a government providing our information to our public and fighting against disinformation, but also not only disinformation. And also just one important point, and the colleagues mentioned, in fighting against disinformation, of course, we shouldn't over-concentrate on disinformation. If we are over-concentrating on disinformation, because it's element of the manipulation of in combating information, because there is elements of manipulation there as well. It also distracts our attention, our core business. It also brings us to the battle space. We are maybe not so powerful. We should also concentrate on the positive agenda that we have, what we are doing for our population, for welfare of our population. Therefore, as a government, we have a lot, positive agenda to share. Let's concentrate on positivism as well, instead of fully, over-concentrating on disinformation elements. But of course, we cannot be silent and we cannot be ignorant.
I think this is absolutely true. You have to fill the information vacuum. You have to, go out there, pre-bunk, be positive. That's what I would say, tweet positive. And really, and that's the only way to fight against disinformation. It's
not really the only way, but I think it's an important way too, in terms of giving out and coming out.
Absolutely. And telling. I want every leader to be like, to be a Zelensky. Some people I can follow, and look up to.
Okay. I'll give you the final word.
I wish Mark Owen-Jones was here. He's a real global expert on social network analysis. And that's a good starting point to adopt novelties in the field of combating disinformation. So we need new techniques. There are new words that I wish all these young people in this room and us, professionals, government communicators, have to adopt very, very soon, like OSINT. OSINT is the rising star of combating disinformation. We've been seeing all these OSINT, open intelligence, open source intelligence accounts on Twitter, Telegram channels, and they keep up verifying, authorizing the information, and joint, like you take a picture and people can tell what coordinates it is only by looking at this picture. So we shouldn't, discussing all these old problems in today's world, we shouldn't omit or undermine novelties that face us quite soon.
Okay, lovely talking to all of you. I think it is time to actually turn to our audience. We talked about a lot of things, and we do have a lot of young people in the audience. Anybody have questions for our esteemed? If you can please, can we have microphones? Microphones for the people who want to. I have a. Please stand up, identify yourself, and who you're asking your question to.
Hello. Is it working? Okay. Yeah. Hello, I'm Han. Representative student from Afyon Kocatepe University, and as we start the panel with the definition of Mr. Matthias Lufkins, and you define it like disinformation is not misinformation. From my perspective, it is like the intended way of misinformation, and like what? For instance, as a world, we do not understand the importance of the words like disinformation without having the troubles, like the huge effects on the world. What I mean by that, for instance, the war that has been living in the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. So, like, for instance, the second sample, like the pandemic, we didn't aware of the viruses, like before the pandemic
Han, if I
has
kindly
been
ask
started.
you what's your question? Sorry.
Okay. So my question is simply that, is it possible to gain the awareness throughout the world with one solution to be awakened or ready for the disinformation? If so, what it could be? So, thank you.
Oh, if I had a magic wand, you know that the first casualty of war is truth. We've seen Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov here 2 days ago who said Russia didn't attack Ukraine in the first place. We're living on two different information planets. One is in Russia, actually now more and more without social media access. So they have their worldview and media, and on the other side we have 141 countries where we have a different view. I wish, and I don't know how we will ever have the same, kind of the same truth, we'll find the same common ground. I have no idea.
Does anybody want to chip into that? We go to move on to the next question. Okay, next, do we have another question in the house? Yes. We'll have one more question. If you could please stand up and identify yourself, please. Thank you.
I am Fazil Qasımov from Azerbaijan. I am a PhD student of Istanbul University. I address my question to Mr. Hacıyev. The occupation of Azerbaijani territories by Armenian armed groups in 1990s caused the mass destruction of our cultural heritage sites, and also the displacement of nearly 1 million Azerbaijani people. I am one of those IDPs. All of my relatives were displaced, and our cultural heritage sites were destroyed. And even a massacre was committed in our village of Başlıvel. If my parents didn't leave our village before Armenian armed groups entered, probably I would not be here now. And also our intangible cultural heritage was negatively affected due to occupation. And we made a lot of efforts to safeguard our intangible cultural heritage. And I joined tens of UNESCO events in many countries just to raise awareness internationally. And however, as you mentioned, our European Parliament adopted a resolution this week that distorts the truth openly. And my question is this: what is the reason behind this hypocrisy regarding the recent resolution? Thank you.
I think Fazal has a good point in terms of politics. Whether you sit on this side or that side, it can be divisive. But when it comes to sort of the preservation of cultural values, it's a much more universal ethos, and we're even seeing disinformation there.
Really, thank you, Fazil, for your question. Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, or Armenia's war against Azerbaijan, it really started with an information warfare, an information blockade. In the early 90s, Armenia unleashed a war on occupied cities of Azerbaijan and conducted massacre. Under such circumstances, US Congress adopted 907 section as if Azerbaijan attacks Armenia. But as the irony of its more involved. And then the process continued. And also, after the liberation of the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, really, I have never seen in my life such a level of destruction. So more than 9 cities of Azerbaijan have been erased. 67 mosques of Azerbaijan have been destroyed. As a matter of the humiliation against the Azerbaijani people, they have put in pigs in the mosque. And entire cultural heritage of Azerbaijani people have been destroyed. But have we ever seen reflection of these human stories, including the stories of the people like Fazil in some of the media outlets, including the Le Figaro? No. But the Le Figaro on a daily basis writes that Azerbaijan conducts destruction of Armenian cultural heritage. My question is that where? How? Give me the facts. No facts.
Have you invited him to
Of course, we invited them, and we have taken their ambassadors, we have taken their journalists on the ground. They made their own fact-finding mission on the ground. There is no reaction. And yesterday, as part of the continuation of a disinformation institution that is paid by the taxpayers of the EU nationals, adopted the resolution. Of course, for Azerbaijan, it's just a piece of paper. We don't have any obligation in front of the European Parliament. But if this institution should respect herself. And there is a resolution that as Azerbaijan conducts destruction of Armenian cultural heritage, my question is where? Yeah. Give me an example. Give me an evidence. No. But where is the stories of Fazil and 100 millions of Azerbaijanis who have become refugees and IDPs? Therefore, in this digital anarchy, and we are facing with such an injustice.
I'm afraid we're going to have to sort of end our discussion here on this sour note. One of the advantages of actually going last in the evening, it does give us sort of a little bit more leeway to actually go over our time. I want to thank all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in actually saying our thank you to Irina, Gökhan, Hikmet, and Mateus for this informative discussion. If you have any more questions, try to catch them out in the foyer. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of your Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.